This is Marty Wilson speaking. I'm sitting with Nancy Kittson in her house at 738 Ann Street in Strasbourg. And it's May 2nd, 2014, around 11 o'clock in the morning. We're here to talk about Sterling Strauser. Nancy apparently knew Sterling.
I did.
So before we get started talking about Sterling, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I was basically raised in Strasbourg. My parents both were from Strasbourg. I went to East Stroudsburg University.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And
what'd you major in?
Art.
Okay, makes sense.
And I've lived here most of my life.
Okay, so how did you meet Sterling?
I'm not really sure exactly when I did meet him. I was a young girl. He used to show at the 7th Street Courthouse Square art shows. And I used to go there. I would save my money and go and make little purchases. And my cousin was an artist, and he used to show there. So he would always...
What was your cousin's name?
Jack Kittson.
Okay.
And we did that.
Oh, nice.
He would always sell me some little ditty. But Mr. Strauser always had something, for kids. He loved anyone who loved art, and he always wanted to make sure that you knew as much as he knew. He wanted to teach you as much as he could about it. And so he was always so gracious in that respect. So I would, that's sort of how I got to know him. I would go to his home. I loved going to his house. It was that wonderful little house on, I think it was Antelomic Street. I'm not familiar with the streets, but, and I loved it that it was always had canvases on the front porch, and there was the smell of paint as you approached the door. And the house was, an artist's home for both of them, him and her. She was a sweet, sweet little lady, but I always felt she ruled the roost. And I don't know if that's true, but being a tall woman, I'm always say that about little women, and she was a little woman. And I always felt that she, sort of ran everything. Because he would ask, like you would go and pick something out, and he would always go and talk to Dorothy first to make sure that is, maybe the price was okay or what, I'm not sure what. And I love that, he painted in the dining room. And
I want to ask you about the house, but before we get there, can we back up for a second?
Yeah.
When you went to the square, 7th Street over by the courthouse, you said he had things for kids? Well,
I think he always wanted... If you wanted to purchase something, me with my little $12, he would find something that, I always felt that he wanted you to have something. And even if it was some little ditty, he, worked up for you very quickly, which a lot of artists, weren't like that. But that was always the impression I got from him. He wanted everyone to have something. And if you were a young child or young person, I was in my teenage years, I think he always liked to make sure that love continued. That was my impression of him. He always had little...
That's the first I've heard that from
somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, there were always little paintings. I mean, I have a few around, I have a little sulky that's about this big, that I'm sure it was, a little ditty he did very quickly. Because a lot of his stuff was done. Didn't take long. I would watch my cousin do stuff like this that would take weeks, maybe months, to finish. And, he was so prolific, and it just flowed. He was an amazing man.
Okay, let's talk about his house now. What do you remember about it? You said that you came up to the porch and you could smell the oil paint on the outside.
He walked up the little sidewalk, and there was the porch across the front that went around the side to off the dining room. And when you walked in, there was a hallway that went back to the kitchen, and the steps went upstairs. And there were paintings hanging, and leaning and on the radiators and whatever. And to the left, when you walked in, there was the living room, and it was an artist's home. I mean, there were 2 chairs. There was a TV, I believe. But one was hers with all her weaving stuff, you know, for her wall hangings.
So she worked in that chair?
Yeah. And then sort of behind it was the dining room. And I remember the washer and dryer were there, which I found fascinating as a young girl. In the dining room. And then there was this huge table that had a big wooden bowl in the middle where Jasper, the cat, always was asleep, it seemed like. And there was a radiator against the wall. And one of the last pieces I bought from him, which I'll show you upstairs, he had just finished. And it was on the radiator drawing. And I mean, I just thought it was magnificent. But I thought everything he did was magnificent. The one thing also that I found fascinating about Strauser was Strauser always was promoting someone else. Like half of the paintings that I had over the years from different artists, I purchased through him, going to his house with my little, you know, allotted amount to buy something, but he would have someone that he wanted you to have. And it was sort of, at least for me, he really didn't want me to leave without something from this person, whether I bought a piece of his or not. He was always promoting somebody else, from McCarthy to Savitsky. There was a man, I think he was an Indian gentleman named Lancaster. He was promoting him, I remember, at one time. And he just, you know, he wanted everyone to do well. And he wanted everyone to see everybody else's stuff. And so that to me was always pretty interesting, because I never felt that with any of those other two artists who I also purchased over the years, Savitsky and McCarthy. They were always selling you their stuff. But Strauser wanted you to have something of everybody's. He wanted you to have well-rounded stuff, and it wasn't like he didn't have enough of his own, because there was a little house out back, I don't know what it was, maybe like a coal cellar or something from years ago, that was just loaded with paintings. I mean, piled, you know, high. So there was always something. I mean, there was always something that you couldn't, well, I couldn't walk in that house and not see, you know, 15 pieces that I wanted.
Did you ever, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask, did you ever see him paint? Did you ever watch him?
Oh, yeah. He would paint. And
no, you're an artist. You're a painter.
No.
Oh, you studied art?
Well, art history really is my thing. Was my thing.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So
no, I can't do anything. Not at all.
But can you talk about his technique, how he painted his style, or?
Well, you know, he really just, I don't know how he did it. You know, because it always looks so easy, and people would say to me, "Oh, I could do that." You know, that's no big deal. But really, you can't. It's not. I mean, I think you probably, if you're really good, you could come up with it. But I don't know. He had this understanding or beauty of flowers and everything. I mean, every period he went through. I remember Jess Pearson used to have this fabulous Ferris wheel that he had done. I think they called it the blue period, when he had the cataracts. And I want to say it was bigger than this one. So what, maybe 3 feet wide and maybe 4 feet high. And it was huge. This beautiful, magnificent navies, but all these dark colors. And yet you knew exactly what it was. It was this magnificent Ferris wheel. And, you know, everything he did like that. One of my other favorite ones of his, Ed Dreby had at Pocono Produce, when it used to be on 5th Street, down by where 2nd Street comes in. At the top of the steps going up to the boardroom, there was this magnificent white chicken. The thing must have been the size of that. And it was just this magnificent, huge color, but it was white, you know, and yet it was sort of like the Ferris wheel. It was navy blue, and yet, you know, it was just, I loved them both. Both of those were two of my favorite paintings of his. And so even like that dark period, when people would say, you know, it was so sad, I always thought, well, you know, it was that he had the cataracts, but my God, he put out such beautiful things at that time in his life.
I wanted to ask you about that, his eye problem.
Excuse me.
But before we leave this, I'm just curious about, you said you actually saw him painting in his house, did you see him? Was he standing?
Yes. Yes. And then, but sometimes it would he'd lay it down. I'm trying to think now. I always felt like he was doing something when you were there. He was never idle. And yet, maybe I never really did see him. I never saw him do a whole thing or anything. It would just be little touches here and there as you walked in. Because you made the appointment, you didn't...
So you called him up ahead of time, said I'd like to come over?
What's a good time? It was like Mr. Savitsky. You couldn't go between 1 and 2 because his wife watched All My Children. And you could not disturb All My Children. Which I always thought was great. But they were great friends because she raised flowers and they would come to visit for the afternoon, and Mrs. Strauser would make, some delightful little, dessert, and Mrs. Savitsky would bring flowers. And you would go to Sterling's after that, and you would see all these vases, maybe 2 or 3 vases filled with flowers. And you knew that that's what he had been working on all week, that whatever she brought, he used.
Were you ever a model? Did you ever?
No.
Mm-mm. So anyway, getting back to his eyes now, do you remember anything about, other than that there was this period of time?
I just remember the period of time.
Do you remember roughly how long it lasted?
Mm-mm. I want to say, well, no, I don't know. I'd be just guessing. I don't know.
Well, I'm curious about something. You met him when you were a teenager, right? Mm-hmm. So did you maintain a relationship right up through the end of his life?
Pretty much, yeah. I would, and he, the other thing that was great about him is he'd let you buy things on time. And I don't know, or at least he let me buy things on time. So I would go and buy a painting, and then I would, send him money every month for it or whatever. I remember when I was in college, I bought something for my mom, and I lived in California at the time, and I would send him a check every month for towards my painting till it was paid for.
Were there ever any receipts or anything? Was there any paperwork at all?
No. You just
pay $200 and I'll send you $20 a week.
I'll pay $20 a month or whatever. Yeah. And I always, that was always so sweet of him, because and no, there was never any paper. I mean, I never even thought about it, and I don't know that he ever thought about it. I guess he knew you would, and if you didn't, I guess you were never getting anything else. So. And I always wanted more, so yeah, it always came.
So something else you said earlier about Dot. You said she ruled the roost. So you walk into the house. You made an appointment. You walk in, and what? I mean, is it like he says to you, "Okay, look, here's my latest work," or do you walk in with something in mind to buy, or how'd that work?
I guess he walked in, and he would show you what he had been doing. Some different pieces around. And she was always seemed to be in the kitchen. She was always cooking, because there was, as I remember, and I was fascinated by this, there was a wood-burning stove in the kitchen that she cooked with. And I thought that was amazing. I was never a camper, never had any interest in camping or doing anything like that. So I thought she was about the most pioneer woman I knew. And I just thought that was fascinating, because she was always baking pies or something, and that was come out of this, what I thought was a wood-burning stove.
So wood stoves are great in this winter, but were you ever over there in the summer with that thing running? It must have been 90, 100 degrees.
It was hot. Well, it was always hot in there. They didn't have air, or if they did, I was not aware of it, because I'm an air girl. But it was... I don't know. I'd go years and not be there. But,
sure.
And you'd see him on the street, and he was always so happy to see you, and what are you doing, and have you bought anything new, and, who are you looking at? He was always so interested in everyone else, which I found, he was always promoting somebody.
So, anyway, you walk in... I'm just trying to picture this.
Uh-huh.
So Nancy Kittson is one day wakes up and says, you know what, it's time to buy a Sterling Strauser. So you make the appointment, you go over, and he shows you what he has. And so of all these paintings, you maybe like this one, right? So then what happens? He has to go talk to Dot, or?
Well, you tell him which ones you liked, and he'd sort of steer you. I always felt like maybe towards what he wanted to get. I don't know if it was what he wanted to get rid of, or what he thought you should have, or he sort of, I don't know why. And I was always, I never argued with him. I was fine. Okay, you think this is the one I should, because I loved them all. It was never like, oh my God, he's making me take this. No. But a lot of times I did leave with stuff from other artists and not anything of his.
And there's no haggling, right? He says $200 or whatever.
Well, I don't haggle. So I mean, I don't know if other people did, but I didn't haggle.
Did you ever see paintings with a D on the back? Somebody told me that those are the ones that somebody thought were so valuable that he needed to clear it with Dot before he sold them, or she would set the price or something.
That could be. That could be. I always thought she was in charge.
Yeah.
And again, I may be totally off base.
Well, what about her stuff? Did you ever buy her stuff?
Oh yeah, I have a wall hanging upstairs. I had a lot of her watercolors. She did beautiful work. I also have one upstairs. I want to show you of hers that I got from someone. It's a circus that she painted. That I'd never seen anything like that of hers. She was very quiet, and as inviting and loving as he was, I always felt she was slightly standoffish. And again, that may have been me. It may not have anything to have done. Maybe that's not how she was, but that was my impression of her. But very sweet. I mean, very kind. Always had a smile. But didn't hang around for the conversation. I don't know whether she was maybe not as interested, or I think he liked it. I think he loved when people came. And he always made the checks out to somebody else. I don't know who. I think it was the daughter. If you wrote checks.
When you wrote a check, you made it out to somebody else.
You didn't make it out to him. And yet I can't remember who it was. But I think it was a daughter. Which I thought was pretty interesting. I didn't care, whatever. Whatever. Just tell me what you want me to do. Excuse me.
Do you remember his visiting the ocean? Do you remember anything, or any of his ocean paintings?
I have a little one up there. I think it's fall.
Oh,
yeah. Now look at that. I mean, don't you think like we should be able to do that? I mean,
I've never thought that I could paint anything.
Oh well, no, I know I can't either.
I've never thought that.
But I mean, it's not like, something like this that you really have to be exact, and yet I couldn't do that to save my life. I think his stuff is just great, and he was.
Why do you think it's great? I mean, this is a tough question. Why Sterling? I mean, what is it about his work that speaks to you?
I think his color was wonderful. There's always so much color and vitality, and nothing's ever sad. I never felt like you could be sad around one of his pieces. It just is.
Is that his there?
There?
The tall one with the flowers.
No. Casey Drake did that.
Casey, no kidding.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, sure, Casey. I know Casey real well.
My aunt was a vice president with him at the bank, and he did that for her, oh my God, 100 years ago. And when she died, I got it. No, I think it's great.
Yeah. I've never seen... I remember... I don't want to get off the track.
No, okay, good.
I remember visiting Casey, and he would be sitting out in that little glassed-in porch on the back of their house, painting florals like that. Although I never saw him paint one that big.
Lovely man.
Yeah, he was. He was great. So, Sterling, let's see. What else? We've covered just about everything. Is there anything else that you...
No, I just think that he was such an unusual man, and his kindness, in the art world to me is unmatched. He wanted everyone to do well. He wanted everyone to see everyone see everybody else's stuff. He just, you know, and I always found that, I thought that was one of the most amazing things about him. That he wasn't, you know, how much can I get out of you? How much can I sell this for? It was just, you know, I want you to have it. I also thought that he may have cut you a little slack if you were, you know, he might have cut me more slack when I was 15 than when I was 30, you know, price-wise. I don't know.
I think he kind of judged when somebody pulled up in a brand new Cadillac at a higher price.
I know Mr. Savitsky did. Oh, yeah. If you came into his house dressed to the nines in a nice car, oh my God, unbelievable prices. Luckily, I bought most of my stuff from him in my hippie days, and so that was not an issue.
The question I started to ask you earlier, and I forgot. Did he have anything to do? Did he inspire you to study art history? That's where I was trying to go with that.
Oh, no. He did inspire me, though, to take art lessons. There's a little painting up top here that I did one summer. I think I was in grade school with Shorty Widmer. He lived down the street from me, and he gave art lessons in the summertime, and that was my creation. It took me all summer to do that. In the Strauser style, and not even close.
Should frame it. Frame it, hang it on the wall.
It doesn't deserve to be framed. It deserves to be what it is.
All right, well, if you think of anything else you want to talk about?
No, I can't. Just that I think, what a lovely man. And I love what they did they're doing at the college for him. I think that's fabulous.
Okay.
Because he'll live on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well then we'll call it a day.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome.